Okay, hello. I'm going to review a game of Benediction that was played over email. And the reason why I'm going to go through this particular game is because here we played through several variations, and it gives a good chance to check out how certain decisions early on in the game lead to very different outcomes. So I'm just going to start off by assuming that the people who are watching this video have already basically learned the rules, and I'll just basically, the purpose of this video is only to just go through the game, look at each move, and understand the reasons for every move. So here we start off with Blue's first and only action for the first turn, and this move does several things. First, it basically, first and foremost, it prevents any piece at all from entering this square on G7, but also prevents any enemy blockades from entering these squares for the points F7 or F8. Importantly, it also is a kind of a prophylactic move that prevents blockades on G1. So red cannot just respond with a mirror image move, strictly speaking, although it can use rotational symmetry, which is what happened in the next couple of moves. So here red has responded with a similar move. This also prevents blockades here and here, and also prevents a kind of another prophylactic. Because if blue gets both of these, then I think this would be a very strong position for blue. So this looks about even, and now of course red gets the second action of the turn, because from the second turn on, all of the turns consist of two actions. Red plays a blockade at D3. This is a slight inaccuracy for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because now red has put a lot of blockades on the left side of the board, meaning that this area is going to be now more vulnerable to a breakthrough by blue, because, for instance, if you put another blockade like here or here, then it becomes harder for red to defend critical squares, and blue might be able to slip a king through and get blessed, and then win the game. So, a second reason why this is a slight inaccuracy is because there's two blockades now defending kind of this square from blockades, meaning that it's inefficient. If red would have put it over here, then red would have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares protected from enemy blockades, but in this case now there are only 3 squares in the zone protected from blue's future potential blockades. So blue takes this opportunity now to basically merge, and it's good to merge early to get some merge pieces as long as you can without fearing for repercussions like a blockade in your zone. It's good to merge because this game is all about having more mobility than the opponent. Because in the end, if you're able to move past the enemy walls and get blessed, then you get even more mobility, and eventually you can either capture the king or bless your own king and win. So red takes this opportunity to move the merge stack as far as possible into the center without fear of being captured. This blue piece is immune to capture at this time, because next move red could, for instance, merge one of these guys and then move 2, but you can see that they cannot go farther than basically 2 points away from the current position of their pieces in the next turn alone. So anything that red does, blue will have an opportunity to respond to. If red had not blocked here, but rather made a merge piece immediately, blue would not be able to move into the center like this. Because then, if blue had a 2-stack, he could move and split, capturing it. And that would be good for red, probably. So red tries to do a similar move where he merges his pieces and goes away, but this, of course, blue's controlling the center, so red can't directly go into the center, so it kind of makes sense for him to go along the sides here. But what this does is it allows a blockade in the zone, and blue had the option of blockading this point or this point, and this point allows the potential further blockading of this point. So that's why it was blockaded in this way, rather than this, which would not offer that chance. And blue also immediately makes a 2-stack from the king. This is kind of looking at the fact, this move actually kind of looks at the fact that there are these 2 blockades here, and potentially thinking about an extra blockade on B2. Red defends and creates a 2-stack. Nothing wrong with this move. The only problem is that it doesn't really see the threat which is coming. So as I will show you, red does actually immediately extend the king and put a blockade on B2. So now, at this point, it's very difficult for red to defend the left flank because it takes several moves to get a piece there. So just an example, so this is what happened in the first variation of the game. Red tries to move a piece kind of in the way and put a blockade on A3, which technically should be illegal. Now, this is a bug, and I didn't even catch this in there, but luckily this is not the game variation. So what happens, just forgive this mistake for a second. What blue does is move the king forward, basically both first threatening this but also threatening here, and places this blockade on B5. What this does is essentially prevent a blockade anywhere in this area, meaning that if red will go here or blue will go here, the king can then travel along the walls without fear of red blockading this before he gets a chance to get blessed. So at this point, it's kind of difficult for them to do anything. So he tries to defend, plays this guy, but of course, at this point, there's just no hope. So we went to a different position in the game, and red tried a different defense. This way, he moves his king. So moving piece to the left, like a 2-stack to the left, basically, but he chose the king. And this falls to a slightly different strategy, but the same, almost kind of the same thing. He goes here, and puts the same blockade in the same area, so this is the same prophylactic blockade. Now, what's happening here is blue is threatening to move and split, so red has to move the king away, and then the king will then, of course, go to A2, and it's the same story. So we're back again. This time, red chose basically not a king to defend, and this is a lot better. So, but even then, there's still some very dangerous tactics here. You see, with this position now, blue has moved his 2-stack into the center, threatening a move and split to capture the king. Red must spend at least one action to defend the king. But he also must spend an action to defend this wall, and because this A3 blockade is actually illegal, and there's no blockade possible here, or here, it's very difficult for red to defend. One thing that red could do, for instance, is move the king to D1 or F1, and then move this red piece back to B1. However, then you end up with the blue king going to A3, allowing the next turn to go king A1, and then having the choice between A5 and I5 for the second actions, meaning that blue would have the chance to spend one of those actions defending whichever corner red was not able to defend. So in that case, this is also kind of a loss for red. So instead, we went back even further. I'll just show this. Before this king move, and before this blockade, and red defends this area now with a piece. So the blockade can't go there, and also it's a preemptive strike. Now it looks nice. Red is spread out on the left and the right, and it's not so obvious, how blue is going to answer this. Blue merges again and adds a new guy, so just trying to build up a couple, a bigger army to create an attack. And this is looking at a future double attack here. He wants to use both of these two stacks to attack the king, because now at this point the walls are defended, so the king is kind of the next obvious target. And how red responds is by creating a kind of more of a buffer zone between the king and these two stacks, which actually makes a lot of sense, because now blue cannot easily go to F4 here without just being captured immediately. And this F4 square is really critical, because there's not so many points which this square, this blue stack, two stack, can go to create a kind of an indirect attack on the king. So nonetheless, blue's attacks with this remaining two stack, and once again takes the time to defend the zone with a blockade here, which is kind of how I felt red should have responded, or should have positioned his kind of parry zone blockades in the first place. Red creates more defenders and moves his king back away from this attacking two stack, and here I think it's kind of nice to have a two stack king, because it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to take the initiative and run towards the wall if you sense a window of opportunity. Because red didn't capture anything, now blue could capture those pieces in red's zone, which blue does, and this results in, so these will be cursed upon the next turn. So now you have these two cursed guys here that are attacking the king. Something must be done. Red captures one of them, and because the blue two stack here is defending the other one, the king cannot capture this. And this one on E3 cannot capture F2 because it already moved once that turn. So king has to go. So blue has now kind of successfully gotten a cursed man inside of red's zone and is not captured yet. So wants to take full advantage of this, capturing red's remaining man in the zone. Keep in mind this is still defended, and placing a blockade on the remaining place that can be blockaded in red zone. So this whole attack was basically to cripple red's regenerative capacity. So red has to run. The other opportunity would have been to use this red stack and move 2 and then split off 1. But it would also be dangerous because blue could do the same. And red wants to regenerate, but it's very difficult now. So blue just kind of boosts his zone, and red now makes a somewhat aggressive move here. And what blue does in response is quite interesting. Now creating somewhat of a fork on the king and this stack that just moved, threatening to move in splits to capture either one, and at the same time using this cursed guy in the zone to create a double attack on the king, meaning the king has to move, or at least one move must be spent in defense of the king, meaning that this red piece does not have the chance to defend itself. So he must capture and escape, with the king, giving blue the opportunity to move and capture, which these guys will be cursed, which is a good thing for blue, because at this point, then blue kind of controls that area, and red's down a piece now. So let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces on the board for blue versus 5 for red. And this is a game where you don't have any limitation really on the number of pieces you can have that you can place. You can keep on placing pieces. So when you have more pieces on the board, it's kind of a transient advantage. But if you keep the pressure on, then you can convert it into a win. So these get cursed, of course, and red moves his stack kind of closer to the center, which is good, but also makes this kind of very passive regenerating move, totally ignoring the danger that the king is in. So here, just to show the variation that results in a kind of immediate loss. Blue merges and moves to attack this king. King tries to run away, tries to do its own attack at the same time. Now we have blue's king moving basically completely out of danger, and second at the same time making very aggressive advances towards red's king. At this point, so whatever red does near blue's zone is of no concern to blue, because blue has the king in his sights and he can't get away. Just check. So A1, B1, put a blockade to defend, because basically whenever you have a piece that's directly opposite from a blockade to another piece, and they're 2 stacks, they're not going to be able to get each other that next turn. So this is one kind of thing I learned. And so blue just kind of moves here, and to prevent the red piece from capturing him, then he just puts the blockade there. And in this situation now, red cannot just move and then split to capture this piece, because then the blue king will capture the red king. So he goes back, tries to create more defensive strategy, but this is just not working. This, because of the way blockades are positioned, blue's king can capture red's king, but not vice versa. So we go all the way back to a position at which red had previously determined that he may be making a mistake. So the answer, I guess, was that yes, it was probably a mistake to do that. And instead, what he has chosen to do is move the king here and make a more centralized drop, which makes sense. So to keep it consistent, I show the same response for blue, and so the king is still under attack. This response by red makes way for the king to get back, and this, I think, is reasonable. So, because there's these two guys here, blue brings the final remaining reserves in for the battle. And this is immediately creating another threat on red's king. As you can see, it will move and split to capture the king. So he moves back again and tries to move his red piece kind of back in here for a defensive measure, which really isn't working, because now blue just continues advancing up the board. Red seems paralyzed. I just offer a couple more continuations, try to make things difficult for blue by creating a blockade, placing, but of course this is a no-brainer, and of course these things will be cursed, and then he recaptures, and these will be cursed, and blue responds again by just finally getting his guy across the wall, make a blessed guy and one cursed guy. He regenerates and captures, but of course this is just, you can't do much anymore because you're stuck with a zone full of cursed guys, a red king that can't even get anywhere, basically, and one guy just stuck behind blockades, another guy completely disconnected from his crew, and now you can see how easily, despite the fact that red tries to blockade everything possible, the blue just splits over the border and gets a blessed king. So this was a very nice example of how to take advantage of an opponent's deficiency in local mobility in some part of the board to create a winning advantage. Hope you enjoyed watching, and thank you very much.